Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are so thrilled to start our new One West Academy quarterly edition with our friend John David. And we are really thrilled about a partnership that we have forged with Sports ETA and John and his team. And he has got some wonderful content to bring to you over the next quarter. So thank you so much for joining us, John, and to all of you. And John, I'll keep letting people in, but I'm going to turn it over to you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Melissa. Thank you, One West membership. We certainly love the opportunity to share a little bit with you today about sports tourism. And this will be a great introductory session about the industry, some trends we're seeing, and so forth. So I'm going to flip over and share my screen for everybody so we can kick this thing off. And boom, I should be good to go there. Perfect. Well, guys, as Melissa mentioned, my name is John David. I'm the president and CEO of the Sports Events and Tourism Association, and I love to start these programs off with, to me, what is the greatest quote ever in all of sports, and it's from Nelson Mandela, and it simply states that sports has the power to change the world. It has the power to inspire. It has the power to unite people in a way that little else does. It speaks to people in a language they understand. Sport can create hope where there was previously only despair. Look, in today's society, with as divisive as everything is, if there was ever a moment where we needed sport, where we needed that new version of the town hall, it's today. And I think that that's one thing that we can honestly see. I think one of the things we can see, from the World Cup experience as the event started happening, what went from a lot of negative talk turned to a lot of positive talk. We love seeing, the Scottish, bagpipe players going into Fenway Park, selling out bars of beer and things like that, learning and living and experiencing ranch dressing, and all of these great experiences, is in the American culture, the great sporting event brought to those great destinations. And really, that's the other thing that we love to share too. And something I want you all to think about, because this is what's great about sport and this subject matter, is that every person on this call can think of a moment where sport has impacted them, whether they were an athlete, whether they were a spectator, whether it was their son, their daughter, or them themselves. Sport impacts everybody. So think about that moment in your life where sport really meant something to you. And at the end of this, we're going to circle back to that. So, to tell you a little bit about Sports ETA, so you understand our framework and where everything we're presenting is coming from. Again, we are the trade association for that beautiful intersection of sports, event, and tourism. Our mission is so simple and straightforward: is to be the essential resource and that leading advocate for the sports, events, and tourism industry. And I think we've got the greatest vision that there is in business, and that's to enhance the quality of life through sports tourism. So, when you look at who we are in our makeup, we were founded 34 years ago, and we were founded originally with 12 sports commissions. And it quickly evolved to today, where we've got over 500 destination DMO members across the United States, comprised of sports commissions, your traditional CVBs. We have Chamber of Commerces that run tourism, and even parks and recreation that do that as well. What really makes us unique is the other subsets of our membership. We also have over 250 rights holder members. These are people that own and operate events, our national governing bodies, our tournament operators, our sanctioning bodies, everything from the United States Olympic Committee and Paralympic Committee to the NCAA, NIA, etc. Then we also have another subcategory, our industry partners. And those are our hotel chains, our third parties, our technology providers, consultancy firms, etc. Bottom line is anybody in that ecosystem of sports tourism can be found at Sports ETA. We're one big tent of a lot of great people. So geographically, if you look at our membership, you can see that we're pretty well spread out with our 800 members across the United States. So let's dive into some trends. First and foremost, with our friends at the Sports Fitness Industry Association. They do an incredible study where over a year, every single month, they're polling about 18,000 people to really create great trends that are topical and timely. And it may be hard to see in your screen here, but the only thing I want you to worry about here is that if you'll notice, every single year since 2020, participation in sports has continued to grow. Great marker for us, because what this tells us, as more and more people are participating in sports, we're building that future sports tourism traveler. That's what we're doing. If my son or daughter goes out and they start playing soccer, there's a great likelihood that they're going to start playing travel soccer in 2 to 3 years. So we're stuffing that funnel, and every year it's improving. When you look at categories of participation, so buckets of sports, fitness sports, outdoor sports, individual sports, team sports, and so forth, the great news here, every single category is showing growth as well. And then when we also look at team sports, this is one that's really interesting that I'll share with you. What we saw prior to the pandemic is team sports had been on a pretty significant decline. And coming out of the pandemic, team sports has prospered and they've done phenomenal, especially in the last 3 years. So your team sports, your basketball, your football, your baseball, traditional sports like that are having record-setting growth. And let me show you some of the numbers. In 2025, soccer grew 15% in participation, cheerleading 13%, basketball 13%, softball 13%, track and field 10%. I mean, these are astronomical growth numbers, but that's what we're tracking with SFIA. And now let's talk about the impact of the World Cup. Like, what is the World Cup happening? Like, you cannot turn on nightly news without seeing something about soccer, right? Well, guess what? In June, SFIA recorded the highest number ever in a single month of participation in soccer in both indoor and outdoor at an 8.2 participation ratio. That's 25.5 million Americans participated in soccer. So, I guess all publicity is good publicity, and it really shows the strength of just soccer alone. And we absolutely anticipate, just record growth in that discipline. So, when we talk about sports tourism, the association defines it in two distinct paths. And I think it's going to make a lot of sense if you haven't seen this before. One is going to be what you're seeing on your left. That is participatory sports tourism. You bring your son or daughter, you're an athlete, you travel to a sporting event. Participatory sports tourism. On your right, spectator sports tourism. I'm going to the World Cup, on Saturday in Kansas City, and I'm going to be a spectator, so I'm going to be a part of that spectator sports tourism economy. Every year with tourism economics and our partners at North Star, we produce the State of the Industry report. The next several slides are going to be on this report, and it's the most comprehensive one we've ever created. So this report is a member-only report for all of our members out there. First time ever, too, that we've actually had a comprehensive collaboration of both spectator and participatory, and it is an incredible resource for tourism advocacy. As you're trying to go out there and promote, sports tourism in your community, this document and a lot of the facts and figures we're going to show you is one of the keys to it. And we also have really, really robust destination profiles in there. So if you're looking at building your sports tourism efforts, or you're looking at expanding that, you want to know what's the average sports tourism budget? What's the average incentive budget? We're going to show you some of those numbers here, but it's even more in depth in the full report. So we talk about sports tourism as a sector. So first and foremost, you're going to love these numbers. In 2025, over 339 million sports tourism travelers. I mean, that is a staggering number. When you look at room night generation, over 192 million total room nights. And when you look at direct spend, $111.2 billion in direct spend. So how does that break down? So we'll break those down a little bit further. That direct spend breaks down into over 274.5 billion in total economic impact, generating 1.6 million jobs and generating 20.5 billion dollars in state and local taxes. So just gigantic numbers. When we look at that even further, those state taxes, over $1.6 billion in total lodging tax, in the grand total on total tax revenue generation is over $42.2 billion. So again, just staggering numbers. And we love to break down that direct spend. That's the number that we look at the most closely. You can see 16.1 billion in air transport, 19 billion in lodging, 20 billion in food and beverage. The recreation spend is absolutely huge in 19 billion. Retail and trade, what are we buying while we're on the road traveling? $17.1 billion there, 5.5 in just tournament operations, which is huge, and then 12.4 billion in local transport. So sports travelers are spending a substantial amount of money. So I want to dive into just that participatory sports tourism number because look, by within the membership of Sports ETA, we certainly have a subset of membership, but it's a small number that can host World Cup events. So oftentimes we really want to showcase participatory sports tours because no matter how large or how small your market is, you can win in attracting participatory sports tourism generating events to your community. So let's talk about the growth and what we've seen. So since 2019 to today, we have seen unbelievable growth in this sector. I mean, really just unprecedented growth. We saw a massive dip in 2020 because of the pandemic, but the growth just continues to shine. Where at the end of 2025, we had eclipsed 227 million sports tourism travelers. But every single year, the number is continuing to growing, and those great trends that we saw from SFIA are going to illustrate that that's going to continue to be the case. So this is not slowing down. So let's talk about spend. Billions in sports tourism related travel. Same thing. Massive dip in the pandemic, but what's been amazing is what we've seen 33% growth over the high point in 2020, in 2019 to now $60.1 billion in spend. Now, what you may be noticing too, spend is outpacing the travelers. So sports tourism travelers are actually spending more, per trip and so forth. So that's a great sign for all of us in this space. So we actually love to kind of pick on spectator sports tourism a bit because we're kind of proud that the participatory side is actually a little bit bigger. But you can see from a traveler perspective, 67% of all sports tourism is on the participatory side. You can see from a room night generation perspective, about 65% is coming out of the participatory side as well. On job created, you see a little bit more of a balance there between 55% participatory, 45% on the spectator side. But again, 1.6 million jobs in this one vertical alone is just shocking. And again, that direct spending number almost evened out there. And when we get to total spend, 54% on the participatory side. So great numbers, just really just illustrating, the size and the scope of what this industry is. One of the things that I like is I like to try to equate these kind of numbers. Like, how do you make it real? How do you make it translate? So, a fun fact for you to remember, if you don't remember anything else, is that again we stated that total economic impact of 274.5 billion, which is crazy. If you looked at that as a GDP and you compared it to GDPs of countries, sports tourism would rank 53rd, right behind New Zealand. So I mean, when we did that, I thought that's the funniest thing ever. I mean, it'd be the 53rd largest country by GDP in spend. So that's the size and the scope of this industry. So again, if you're not engaged in sports tourism, we want to work with you and help you get it because every destination can win in this space. Within our study too, I told you we have a lot of different things that we look at. One of the things that we love to analyze is number of events that destinations are bringing in based on budget size. So when you see that budget 100K or less, that's the sports tourism budget in a destination. You see 100 to 500,000. That's saying that they have up to a $500,000 budget for dedicated to sports tourism. So what's fascinating to see and what we know, the more that's invested in sports tourism, the more events you're going to attract. Bottom line. And that holds true from the data. We also asked our rights holders how many events they're hosting. And I think the really key takeaway on this is while these scales have been pretty similar based on their budget size, the bottom line is every year they're hosting on average more and more events. So more events are available for you to go out there and grab. This one I think is really interesting. If you're not familiar with it in sports tourism, it is a highly incentivized market. Oftentimes, when you're bidding on an event, you're allocating funding in terms of a host fee or a rights fee to attract that event. You can see this, out of our report on budget size, what those average host fees are, based on those budgets. And I think the next slide is what gets really interesting. When we ran the report in 2021, the average incentive budget was only 200,000. By 2023, it had doubled, and in 2025, it jumped another $25,000 on average. And again, that's average over all budget sizes, but some really interesting data points there. And this slide shows you, again, by budget, another resource that's out there for you. What's the staffing look like? How many full-time staff members are we bringing in to work on this type of projects and to this type of effort? So some great numbers there. But again, budget size, you just see those numbers increase. And we certainly do have destinations with well over a $5 million sports tourism budget with as many as 20 and 30 staff members. Its sole job is focused on sports tourism. So shared a lot of information about the destination side, showed you that incentive, budgets and things of that nature. But how do rights holders make their decision? What are the primary factors? Number one on their mind is venue cost. So when you're bidding on an event, number one is unequivocally that venue cost. The other thing that we're seeing is number two is again what we just talked about, that host fees and financial incentives. Third on the list, destination location. I can tell you as a former rights holder for 25 years, it was not often about the destination. It really was about where I could go and have the most affordable event. I knew this, and I was, if you don't know, I was for 25 years, I was with USA BMX, the governing body for the Olympic sport of BMX racing. Great time there. This is an organization that owns and operates about 80 national level events. The events on average had about 1,000 athletes that would attend, about 4,000 spectators. So you'd be bringing in about 5,000 people to your destination. So great kind of mid-size events that we would bring in. I knew that if I was looking regionally and I'm looking between the state of Utah or the state of Colorado, it didn't matter. I was going to have the same size event. So, and it didn't matter what city I went to, truthfully, so I would oftentimes, where can I get the best venue cost? What destination can incentivize me the highest? So it's not surprising that destination location is on third. Fourth, hotel rates. Fifth, destination offering. And sixth, this was a new one. This had not jumped on the list before, but personal safety and environment. And I was actually really glad to see that. So rights holders are looking at a great, safe environment for the families that they're bringing to your destinations. The other thing that we did that's really interesting is I'm a rankings guy. I love rankings. I love stats and statistics and data, as you probably can tell already. And I wanted to rank our states in sports tourism. And so, if you've ever worked with an economist like tourism economics and said you want to do a state ranking, I don't recommend it because I'm still paying for that. But we had some real fun coming up with these numbers and ranking them. And we actually pulled in very topical information from our housing companies, total room nights from several of the larger players and things like that to really try to make sure these were as accurate as we could be. So you can see the top 10 here with Texas being number one in participatory sports tourism, Florida two, California second. And then again, you're seeing Ohio, North Carolina, Tennessee, Georgia, and Illinois. So what you will notice, not a lot of West Coast. Not a lot of West Coast, but we're hoping that's going to change here in the future. Now, when we flip that to spectator sports tourism, you see Arizona jump in. Why does Arizona jump in? Really, it has a lot to do with spring training with Major League Baseball. So it makes sense. It makes sense when you think about it in that perspective. They jump into that 10 spot. California, number one on spectator sports tourism. But let me tell you what's fascinating here and where I think there's massive growth on the West Coast. I was actually just talking to Cal Travel about this today. This is a slide from about 15 years ago of states that financially supported sports tourism or had some type of sports tourism effort that they were working towards. Some of the founders, Utah Sports Commission, Virginia, Maryland, others, and these have dedicated state budget funding that goes to helping destinations attract events to their state. This is 10 years ago.
Hmm.
This is today. State after state after state, they're working with their local destinations in trying to find a way to incentivize and promote. I can tell all of you, this is a game changer. I'll give you a great example. One of one of the best funding in all of sports tourism is out of the state of Texas. Texas does a phenomenal job in supporting big events, medium-sized events like the BMX one I mentioned, mega events, and so forth. Well, at BMX, I would host two events a year in the state of Texas. And Missouri kept begging me, the Kansas City folks, like, come on, we've got a great facility. Why won't you bring the event here? And I would simply tell them, I'm like, because you have no state funding. I mean, the state funding in Texas is almost a two times amplifier. And from a financial perspective, that's just straight off expense savings. That's why we would continue to go to Texas. The day that they passed the youth and amateur sports tax in Missouri, I signed a 5-year contract for events in Missouri. That's the kind of impact it takes. So we're seeing great legislation. Arizona just had some modifications in their Arizona in their legislation that it's going to hopefully open the door for not only TIDs but also state funding. California is working heavily on this. And another thing the association is doing is we've actually just started a massive research project that we're going to conduct that's going to go in and chronicle these states that are active in sports tourism, what they're doing, what are the best practices, and then a pathway forward for destinations. So really something we're excited about and important one to track on. When we talk about funding too and how is sports tourism funded, no surprise here, probably how all sports tourism is funded. This is how our members report it. You can see primarily through hotel tax. What we tell everybody, especially in sports tourism, your major opportunity is TIDs. And when we see a destination that gets a TID pass for sports tourism, it is absolutely game changing. I mean, just absolutely game changing. And so we're seeing great growth in that space. Another trend that we can't not talk about, it's international events. And it's funny because I'm going to have a different twist than what you think about. We love these international events. We love the World Cup. We love LA 28. We love Rugby World Cup. We love Utah 2034. However, the reality is for our destination members, these are a handful of destinations. So the real question is how can we leverage these international events? How can we maximize this opportunity to attract other events that are meaningful for all size destinations? And that's one of the things the Association of Sports ETA that we've really been working on. And I would tell you where the strength is here is international events are pretty funny is this stuff goes in cycles. Okay. So for the last 10 years, 12 years, almost 15, the international federations, FIFA, Olympics, so many of these folks have been just jamming events into the Middle East because the funding was so strong. They're going to Azerbaijan, they're going to Qatar, they're going to Doha because there's just massive federal checks that are getting cut for these events to be there. Well, they're tiring of that and they need to go to great local destinations and they want to come to the US. The international federations desperately want to be here. So where we see the great opportunity in some of these opportunities. You can see this is, world basketball, world skate, world judo. There's so many great Olympic federations, even non-Olympic federations like world darts that have these phenomenal international events with these great, international attendees that can be hosted in almost any destination size. And so we actually have just launched and announced yesterday our international sales mission where we're taking 20 destinations with us to Lausanne, Switzerland, where we're doing a focused, approach to attacking these international federations to bring their events to the United States. And at our annual symposium, we actually brought all of these logos as hosted buyers to Las Vegas this past April to meet with our destinations. I can tell you this too, guys. They couldn't believe we had 500 destinations in one room that wanted their sporting events. They were blown away with it. So our focus on international is how are we going to maximize the Olympics and attracting these international events to the West Coast while we have these folks in California. So that in our minds is the international opportunity. So let's switch gears and let's talk about trends in women's sports, okay? First of all, women's basketball and collegiate basketball. You can't talk about sports and not talk about this. And these numbers are a little bit dated, but they're so crazy you have to share them. The Final Four game in 24 had 18.7 million viewers. That is to date the most watched basketball game ever on ESPN, men or women. Like staggering numbers. If you look at the audience in comparison, it was larger than every NBA final game. I mean, if I told you this 5 years ago, you'd have laughed at me and said that's impossible. And the number on women's basketball has been phenomenal. A lot of this was the Caitlin Clark effect, but it just really, while they've settled a little bit, women's Final Four and women's basketball is just on fire. Another one that I would share with you that a lot of people did not know this, and that's the fact that in the Paris Olympics, that was the first ever Olympic Games to have complete parity between men and women's sports. That had never happened. It had never happened where it was 50-50 athlete participation. So that's a massive win for women's sports. Another one that we love to share that you may not be familiar with is the KC Current, the women's soccer team, the professional women's soccer team that built an unbelievable stadium, $118 million stadium dedicated to professional Women's sports team. Again, same thing. 10 years ago, if I told you that somebody would spend $118 million to do that, you probably would have laughed me out of the room. But that's the reality. The best news is too about it is within 2 hours of opening their season tickets, they sold out. Now, let me tell you what's even more special about this. Do you know where every female athlete that plays soccer wants to have their championship game at? In the stadium that's dedicated to women's soccer in Kansas City. And the amount of events that they're winning to that facility that are not that are outside of their season are absolutely phenomenal. Another one we love to share with you, and if you've seen this, I apologize, but most people haven't. So this is University of Nebraska Memorial Stadium. Guys, that's a volleyball court in the middle of a football stadium. They set a Guinness Book of World Record with 92,003 fans. It was the largest participation at a live female sporting event ever anywhere in the world. So amazing numbers in that respect. And the quote that's going to wrap it all in together is this one right here. 94% of women who hold C-suite positions are former athletes. Staggering number. Female participation rate in team sports too, for the first time ever, eclipsed greater than 20% in 2025. So great. I can't talk about it enough. I've got three daughters, all that played sports, Faith, Grace, and Jolie, and it's just so cool to see these numbers like they are. So let's talk data. Data has never been more prevalent in sports tourism ever before. In the vast majority of our membership, certainly use the DI and Tourism Economics and Sports ETA event impact calculator. It's a great subscription you get through DI or Sports ETA. And really, what we're seeing is all things benchmark. We're seeing destinations that are using the calculator to bid on events, to make smart decisions on where they think the event and how it's going to perform, and then certainly that post-event reporting. We even have destinations where their entire goal process for their sports tourism professionals are gauged exclusively off the calculator. So great resource there. The other one that I would say is geotechnology and what we're seeing with geofencing and everything else from Placer AI, Zartico, the guys at Arrivalist, and many others. In sports, it's challenging. You know what? Again, let's all think about it. I'm going to go to 8 business conferences. Every business conference I go to, I proudly pull out the Amex and I stay at the host hotel, even if it's more expensive and things like that. I take my daughter to a soccer game. I'm using points. I'm doing everything I can to save that personal money, right? So it's challenging. It's very challenging to track room nights in sports tourism. It's not as clear cut as a business event or a convention. So that's where a lot of these technologies are really enhancing that trackability and showing us the true breadth of sports tourism. The other one resource I'll share with you that we've got that we created is called the Earned Media Calculator. One of the challenges we had, and this was a direct result of a resource that we created because of a member. And a member asked me quite simply, they said, "Look, I've got this event, and this is funny, you guys are gonna laugh, a cornhole championship." And he's like, "Man, it's I've got this cornhole thing, and it's weird. It's like 500 athletes, so it's not a lot of room nights. It's not a but they're on ESPN." And this conversation was like in June. And July 4th, I'm cooking hot dogs, and on television, on ESPN, in the middle of the day, is this cornhole tournament. And I couldn't believe the commercials they gave him and all this stuff. So one of the tools that Sports ETA created was an earned media calculator to where now a destination can even go back in time or look at an event that occurred in another destination and find out what is that media value. If you paid for the media that was earned, what is the value? We charge $500 to run the report. I mean, tiny investment to get and I'm telling you guys, it is fascinating. You have an international event. We had a couple of international events that Vegas wanted us to benchmark on. We had one where the media hit in India and it tracked like $8 million in earned media. And it's exactly what they wanted because they wanted to hit that international market. So it's a great resource we have for all of our members that really gives you some great intelligence. Another really interesting trend, I mean, and this is actually happening in Congress right now, and it's private equity investment in youth sports. We are seeing a tremendous, all of these logos that you're seeing have some type of private equity involved in them. And I know you may be sitting there and be like, well, how does that really apply to me? And that's kind of how I thought at first until this. I was talking to a destination and they shared with me that 2/3 of all of their sports tourism events were owned by Three Step Sports. 2/3 were owned by one company because one company had come in and bought all of these tournaments and all of these organizations. So this consolidation is something that's important to track and to see. In some cases, there's some very good aspects of it. In some cases, not so good. But the other thing when it comes to facility development, we've seen this massive trend where they're going out and they're coming in and saying, look, I don't want to bid, and compete against other people for your park, for your softball fields or your baseball fields. I want to do a public-private partnership and build our own complexes. I just was in Myrtle Beach and I looked at this beautiful Ripken baseball complex that's a private partnership, but is primarily there just for Ripken tournaments. So there's some really interesting opportunities here, and there's some really interesting headway and trends. But when it comes to facility development, I can share this with you. It is an arms race, and it's not going to slow down. And this is the storyline that I would tell you when it comes to sports tourism and to facility development. The destinations that are getting it across city, Parks and Rec, and DMO are the ones that are winning. There's a simple fact here. You will never ask your local park director, you will never ask them the question, hey, do you have all the facilities you need to service your community? And they will never tell you yes. There's not a park director in America that has the facilities that they need. The smart destinations are figuring out that when you take sports tourism and you stack it on top of parks and recreation, you have the ability to take a beautiful park that was built to standard park city standards and is now elevated to championship level tournaments. So now, with that boost of sports tourism, with that extra revenue that's going to come from taxation and so forth, we're seeing city after city build much more enhanced facilities that are maximizing that. And it's a beautiful structure. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, local citizens have world-class parks and world-class facilities that are paid for Friday, Saturday, and Sunday from tournaments. So facility development is not slowing down. We have tons of resources on that. So we also love to work with our friends at Aspen Institute in Project Play. This is really interesting. So one of the things here, on average, the average American family spends about about $1,500 in sports. I know any of you guys that have children in travel sports, you're saying that's a weekend, guys. That's not, but again, this is an average among everybody, so keep that in mind. What is interesting is the rapid increase. Since not 2019, spending in the primary sport, again, this is your sports tourism traveler, has increased 47%. We look at that actually as a cautionary tale. So, but just interesting to know how much the spending, and where is the spending? The spending is primarily in travel and lodging. So, to sum up the trends that we've seen before we go to some cool case studies, one, we're seeing continued consolidation with that private equity. Two, we're seeing increased competition. Guys, I can tell you as destinations, every destination in America is increasing their investment in sports tourism. It is a winner all day long, and it's not slowing down. In a lot of places, that's great. In a lot of places, it's almost a little nerve-wracking because it's getting, more and more competitive to attract events to your destination. Like I showed you from Aspen Institute, we do have kind of that cautionary tale of seeing rising cost. The great news is that the participation is strong, and we've got a strong pipeline for 5 to 10 years of steady growth like we've seen in the past 5 years. So let's talk about some really interesting case studies. So this is one I love. I love to illustrate that any destination can win massively in sports tourism. So everyone knows NCAA. We know the women's Final Four, the men's Final Four. We know these great NCAA tournaments of so many different sports, track and field, and so forth. What you may not know, what you may be shocked by, is what city has hosted the most NCAA collegiate championship events. And I'll spare you the suspense. That city is Salem, Virginia. So now it's kind of a trick question, guys, because I didn't say it was D1, D2, or D3, but Salem, Virginia has hosted more than 100 NCAA championship events. And look, this is their city's website. The city's tagline is Virginia's championship city. I mean, how cool is that? And what is Salem, Virginia? Population of 25,000. Their college has an enrollment of 1,800. Yet they have hosted that many tournaments. Now, if you ever have a chance to meet those folks, you'll meet John Shaner, who's the head of Park and Recreation, who is completely committed to sports tourism. His park system, it made that commitment 30 years ago to have world-class facilities, and because of that, his destination is attracting these type of events, and their city and their DMO are doing phenomenal. So again, any size city can win in this area. Let me show you another one. West Monroe, Louisiana, population of 13,000. They just built a 112,000 square foot indoor facility at a cost of $22 million. dollars. The annual economic impact is the cost of the development. Now, let me take you one further on here. These folks are really passionate about sports tourism in northern Louisiana. They wanted a great event. They went out, bid on, and won the table tennis Olympic trials for the U.S. Now it's table tennis, and again, no knock on table tennis. But do you know the only Olympic trials that happened in the last Olympic cycle in the state of Louisiana happened in a town of 13,000 because they wanted an Olympic level event. That's, I mean, just again, a great example of a phenomenal facility in a small town that's winning. And let me give you an example of some creativity that I love. I guarantee few people in this call have ever heard of Ypsilanti Township. Ypsilanti Township is a tiny town out of Ann Arbor, and they had an asset, and it's a lake. And like, what can we do? They invested just under $500,000 and created an absolutely phenomenal rowing facility. They installed rowing lanes, inflatable rowing lanes that you pull out an app on a phone, hit a button, and the rowing lanes pop up. And now they're bidding on USA Rowing National Championships, international events, and so forth. So they took an existing asset, saw that they could do rowing with the link that they had, and now they've got this great partnership and they've done it. So any town can win there. So I want to share some of the resources before we close things out that Sports ETA offers for you. One, we've got an incredible online learning management system that can take you through a lot of these lessons that I've shared with you today. So a lot of great 2 and 3 hour courses that are built online, from facility development to intro to sports tourism to sports tourism accounting and so forth. We have a ton of free white papers that go out and show things like, facilities and finance and so forth. We also have a great slate of events that are coming up for you. We've got, most importantly, our 4S Summit. This is truly where sports tourism professionals learn. It's a phenomenal program that we'll be doing in October. If you've got anybody on your team that you're wanting to get them excited about sports tourism and really just learn how to maximize it, it's in Fort Worth, Texas, at our program. Last year we had Cal Ripken, the Baseball Hall of Fame, speak, and many others. And this year we've got some great content as well. For our leaders in sports tourism, if you, and this is great because this is on the West Coast, our Chief Executive Summit will be in San Diego in January in 2027. This is a phenomenal event. It's a quick hitter. It's a reception, on Monday night. It's all day programming on Tuesday, and it's, a half day programming on Wednesday and fly home. So 2 nights stay will get you in and out. We're at the Intercontinental Hotel right on the bay in San Diego, and the content will be phenomenal. Again, great speakers. This past year, we were in Columbus, Ohio. We had Ross Bjork, the athletic director of the Ohio State, and then we had the head of PGA Tours present. So great topical information there. And again, more resources on white papers I'm going to blast through. We just published a great report on convention centers and sports tourism and how they work together, and also a study on compensation and benefits. If you're ever wondering, what the benchmarking is on comp and benefits, our members have access to that too. We've recently launched Sports ETA's Active Insight. This is an incredible tool for our members that's online that shows you really interesting numbers. ADR in the month of May, what is it across the country? What is ADR in the month of May across hotel brands? So when you're looking to benchmark yourself against other destinations or bidding on an event, tons of information through Active Insight. This is phase one of this too. Phase two is actually going to be an LLM. We have it. We're working through the process of it right now to finalize that. But you're really going to be able to just jump in and say, "Hey, what sport generated the most room nights in April?" You're just going to ask a chatbot these type of questions, and it's going to regurgitate it through a massive data set. So really, really great stuff. Also, every Friday for Sports ETA members, we send out a phenomenal RFP distribution list of all the new RFPs that have been added to the system. Comes right to your inbox, nice and simple. And with membership too, everyone receives access to our directory of over 800 members. We also do these great community groups between our college event community, our mentoring community, small to mid market, large market, in facilities, in park and rec. Really great opportunity for that deep dive learning. A great CEO community group as well, where we go in and focus on high level discussions. We've had Adam Sachs present on there before. We've had Mike Gamble on there before. So great stuff there within resources that are available through Sports ETA. So let's close this thing out. As we talk about sports tourism, everyone can look at this picture and know exactly what this is because this is what we live every day, right? We live this tourism cycle. We bring visitors in, visitors spend money. That creates economic impact, that creates tax revenue, and it's just this vicious cycle of doing it all over again. And that's what's so great about sports tourism. It truly fuels communities. It's more than heads in beds. It's truly a legacy that gets established in a community. And we love to expand that definition of success. Sports tourism is all of these things that you're seeing on the screen. It is economic impact. It is tax revenue. It is job creation. It's all those great data points that I showed you. But I would tell you that more importantly, sports tourism is quality of life. When you have a great destination, when you see that West Monroe, Louisiana, that city of 13,000 people, and they now have this beautiful indoor facility for their kids to play on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, for those their kids to have summer camps in and things like that, that increases the quality of life for the destination. Education. I mentioned that I've got three daughters, Faith, Grace, and Jolie. They all competed in sports. We traveled all over the place with them, and they all knew one rule. A's and B's you play, C's you sit home. Sports tourism is so often the conduit of connectivity between a parent and a child on education. And you also saw that fact that 94% of women in the C-suite were former athletes. Business recruitment. We are seeing destinations that do sports tourism at a high level that have great facilities that are leveraging their facilities to bring and create economic development, to bring businesses to their town because they simply come in and they show them these phenomenal facilities that were partially funded because of sports tourism. I would tell you the most important thing for me is this, is that I would say without a shadow of a doubt in my mind that sports tourism is the future tourism pipeline. And it's simple. It is simple. We have athletes as young as 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years old that are traveling all across the country to go participate in a great sporting tournament with their family. And look, I hit the road last year and I was on, I think, 38 flights traveling and sharing this deck with others across the United States. Travel sucks. I mean, it's not fun. I mean, going through the airports is not enjoyable. But you know what's awesome is when you're in the airport and you're at gate 13 and you look over and you see that 12-year-old lacrosse team. Every kid with that backpack on that has that same logo on it with their numbers embroidered on it. There's one thing that every one of those kids has on their face, a smile. It's our opportunity to make people love travel again at a very, very young age. It's an opportunity to plant a seed that's going to last a lifetime in your destination when you bring those young athletes right to your hometown. So that's why I love to circle back to how has sports tourism impacted you? You know, what has that done for you with all these things we just talked about and shared with you? Where is that moment where it impacted you? And I'm going to tell you my story of how it planted a seed that meant something to me. I raced motocross, I raced BMX, traveled all over the United States. One of my favorite places to travel to and to race at was Milton, Florida, in the panhandle of Florida. There was a great track there, and for whatever reason, it was awesome. I just did well there. I raced well there. I competed well there, and I loved it. And if I did well on Sundays, if I did well on Saturday, on Sundays, my dad would take me and we'd go down to Navarre Beach, and I could spend Sunday on the beach. So I have three daughters, all born and raised in Chandler, Arizona, outside of Phoenix. And we just did a family vacation. Guess where I took them? To the panhandle of Florida. Because that's a spot for me that I love and I wanted to share with them. That's the power of sports tourism. And that's why sports tourism has the power to transform and improve society. So I think we've hit the nose right, the timing right where we wanted to. So the great news is it looks like we've got at least about 15 minutes to hopefully answer any questions that you may have.
Anybody have any questions for John?
Yeah, hi. Can you hear me?
We got you, Stu.
Yep. So Stu Wexler, and I'm with Visit Carson City in Carson City, Nevada. And when you were showing your map, you had everywhere except Nevada, and that's that's what obviously we want to do. Um, so, and you were talking about state funding and all that. I'd like to know, in our legislative session, how do we go about bringing it up before the legislator in certain states to at least get it in their subcommittees? And I don't know if it always goes through, but at least a starting point to bring that up, because obviously in Nevada you have Vegas as the
Yep.
point of everything, but we are in the most beautiful part of Nevada, and that's northern Nevada. Carson
Absolutely.
City is 25 minutes from Lake Tahoe, Reno, Carson Valley, and all that. So you're talking about the facilities and the venue. We are the perfect location, but we're just starting to get into it as a DMO in Carson City. So maybe before the state legislator, what kind of, how do you start even bring it up? Nevada is every other year when our legislation is in session, which is good because that means their politicians are not in all the time uh, making laws and stuff. But just a starting point to
Yeah.
maybe get that before the legislative session, to at least bring it up, talk about it, and all that.
Yeah, Stu, great question. First of all, certainly Reno is a member of Sports ETA. If the flag's not right, that's probably on me. But longtime member, they do very, very well in sports tourism, and they're very active in that space. Look, this is one of the biggest challenges, and what I would tell you that I think there's two things, and again, the very reason why we do the studies that we have, and we have some great one-sheeters that we can certainly share with Melissa to distribute to the team, is one, bringing up the awareness. You have to show legislators the size and the impact of this marketplace because they just don't realize it. And once you start showing them the numbers, most of them have either been athletes and traveled or have kids in travel ball, right? So it can resonate pretty quickly. So one, it's having an active approach with your local legislation, your local congressmen and women, and really showcasing that information. Now, as a part of the storytelling, what I will tell you is often the challenge, but I would flip it and say the opportunity. Your state is such a great example. When you go and you start approaching legislation in terms of coming in and funding sports tourism, the first thing that they're going to think is, why do we just want to get a bunch of money so that Las Vegas can attract more events, right? Now, this is how we flip that story is the great news about sports tourism. And you can see from exactly how I presented the data to you all, in my mind, the places where we can win the most is small and mid markets. Small and mid markets are we have some markets that is their entire tourism strategy is sports tourism. So we now go to legislation and we see, you know what? Vegas is going to get the events Vegas gets. When we go out and we establish state level funding to amplify the great efforts of the DMO, let's take Carson City. Carson City is bidding on a great event. You go out from a state level, you support Carson City with an extra $20,000 to amplify and win an event. You've just given Carson City the ability to host their scalable Super Bowl.
Gotcha.
You can have a citywide in sports tourism with a minimal investment in a small to mid market. That's the beauty of it. And when legislators start hearing that, they really start to get excited because initially they're thinking mega events. They're not thinking participatory sports tourism and youth and amateur, where again, in a phenomenal small community in the state of Nevada, a small injection of capital to help attract an event gives them their Super Bowl. So those would be my recommendations.
Right. Yeah. And as a DMO, when we have organizations come to our area, we have sponsorships, endorsements, which help them with the facilities. But looking to expand, like what you've been talking about, that bring it to a point of view. And what's nice about us is because we are smaller than Vegas, all of northern Nevada, we all participate and partner with all the DMOs
Nice.
in Reno, Carson Valley, even Tahoe. We at South Lake Tahoe, they have the
Yeah.
new event center up there, right? So we've been working with them as well, and they work with us because we have more of the fields, the greens down in Carson City than they do up at the lake.
Right. Right. I've
So,
heard that.
so that's another unique area for us that, but it's just like you were talking about. It's getting that stigmatism of Vegas is everything.
Right.
Because if I do, they're going to funnel everything down towards Vegas.
Right. Right. Exactly.
So, so it's better just to contact the local legislators for that part. Is that what, the best way to,
Without a doubt, to create awareness, to share with them what the opportunities are. Again, show them the great numbers, and show them why it's meaningful and it matters. And I think, and again, I think it's something to translate, and it's such a hot topic right now, and it's really,
right?
they're
Yeah.
hearing about sports tourism in places they've never been spoken before.
Yeah. And what's nice too is like tourism, a motor coach and all that. We've always done that, but we're seeing a little bit of a hesitation with the economy where sports tourism doesn't seem to be hesitation if the economy is up, good or bad, whatever. Where you have companies that do tours, they may hold back a little bit, but sports, we're seeing sports doesn't. So that may be something too. So
Yeah,
no,
and that's held true. I mean, through the recession in 2008, the numbers stayed, very, very consistent. And then when you looked at, what came out of the pandemic, I mean,
right,
sports tourism was the first to come back. And simply put, I mean, most of us on the call are parents, and I mean, and the one thing that you're not going to sacrifice, is your child's participation, in that need. And I think too that when we look at society today. Sports tourism it has such a growth rate right now too as well because parents are struggling to get their kids off the computer screens, off the phones,
yeah,
and they go and they're like, look, I've got to get this kid in a sport. We've got to get him outside playing and doing something, interacting with other children, creating
exactly.
teamwork and this
Yeah.
understanding. And that's not going to slow down because the pressure of video games and phones is only going to keep increasing. And we feel that sports and especially sports tourism is going to continue to grow.
And you mentioned North Star. Do you just go the teams show? Do you guys go there to teams?
We do. Yeah. Yeah. We actually host an educational event at Teams. Those are long-term partners of ours. Actually, the first sponsor ever of the association was North Star.
Okay, yeah, because I'll be down there this October in Birmingham for Teams 26. So
And then on the flip side of that, the association hosts a very similar event, actually a larger event than that. It's our annual convention. It's called Symposium. We were actually ironically in Vegas this year, and we had
I
over
heard that. Yeah.
1,200 attendees. This is crazy. We facilitated 24,446 B2B appointments.
Wow.
So if you're wanting to go and find rights holders, find those international rights holders too, come join us in Salt Lake City next April, and we'll make sure that we've got a great event for you.
Okay. Yep. Sounds great. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks, dude. Tracy, I saw you had your hand up. Great to see you again.
Hi, good to see you again too. I have a couple quick questions for you. First of all, excellent presentation. It's always wonderful to hear you speak. In fact, I wrote down, get John David as a speaker. So we'll do that. Quick couple questions. One, that earned media calculator, that sounds fascinating. Do you have a sample of that?
Yeah,
Okay,
definitely.
great. I would love to get one of those. Second, about state funding. As you know, California does not have state funding for
Yeah.
that, even though we are working on it. How many other states do? Because I wasn't able to count.
It's well over half now. It's 25 going on 30. Kansas was the first to join it. I think Arizona's going to be right behind it. Again, this is one of those ones when we look at trending. It's primarily East Coast, and I mean this is where the West Coast. I think all of our partners here at One West. I mean where we've got to get going on this because this is a game changer. And Tracy, happy to report. I know Todd on your team is working heavily on this from his angle. We talked to Cal Travel today about this pretty extensively with Barb and her team, and we're doing everything we can because if California could have that injection, it would just be absolutely massive. And quite frankly, in all the West Coast states, I mean, seriously, it's desperately needed. And the fact that these states are trying to compete against this funding that's available in Florida, this funding that's available in Texas. I mean, we're fighting with one hand tied behind our back compared to these other states, and it's imperative.
Yeah.
But it's a winning solution when you look at the numbers.
It is, and especially for the non-gateway places, like the Tri-Valley, et cetera. And that brings me to my next question, which is about sponsorship money. And I didn't get a screenshot of it fast enough. But Todd has told me that that amount keeps going up every year, and so that you need to really put a lot of sponsorship, bidding money into your departments for that. Have you seen that gone up in the last 5 years? And what do you feel is like the minimum that we need to be sitting on if we want to try to attract business?
Yeah, I mean, great question, Tracy. And I know I had I had so much stuff I wanted to show you guys. I went probably super fast, but if you looked at it, the data that we recorded, you know, that data, I think from the numbers, it was originally 200,000, was the average. It doubled to almost 400,000. Again, this is across large markets too, but I can share with you, Tracy, the report. I'll send it to you directly that has that by budget size to show you can benchmark your entire department, both from a staffing perspective and from a budget size. And I think that's what's key. You want to look at from a budget comparison to others, what they're doing. But to your point, it's very competitive. I mean, destinations are jumping in. And let me give you an example of even larger destinations that weren't fully invested in sports tourism that now are. Anaheim, California. I mean, a great example of it. Anaheim was not heavily invested in sports tourism, kind of dabbled in it in and out, not consistently. Mike Waterman gets over there and says, you know what? We're Anaheim. Why wouldn't we do this? And they've invested heavily to complement what's happening with the Orange County Sports Commission. So that's just one example of a destination that's jumped in. We're also seeing, other large markets that have just not touched sports tourism before that are coming in saying, look, this youth and amateur thing's a winner. Like we need this. San Francisco on the West Coast is a great example of it. If I showed you the number of events Salt Lake was producing on an annual basis. So it's interesting. A lot of those were kind of sleepers, and your small and mids could really strive. Well, the large markets are kind of waking up to this saying, no, 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 we want these events. They're great. So it's important. I mean that type of funding mechanism, arming Todd with some budget money that he can go in and help support and attract events is mission critical. And it's just the marketplace.
Yep. And that's key for us when we're building our budgets each year and we're trying to develop. I did notice your slide on how many staff members, and we are woefully small. We have one.
Right.
So we got to make our way up to that. So, but
And
thank you
that's
very much, John.
that's oh, a pleasure, Tracy. And that's the other thing. I mean, you were seeing, when we hosted our symposium event, of the 1,200 attendees, 38% were first-time attendees. On our
Wow.
4S summit that's coming up, that education only, we'll have almost 40% of first-time attendees, and these are all new hires at DMOs and it's not just they're replacing somebody and they're a new person. It's a new position that's been created to add on. It's a new salesperson. Also services. Look, services in sports tourism, that is a different animal than your traditional DMO services person. I mean, you're asking these people to go out and schlep around, bike fencing and stuff like that. I mean, it's core to sports. So those are some other key indicators that you're seeing.
Thank you.
Any other questions we can help with? Well, guys, you saw the slide with my cell phone number on it, my email address, and our website. Certainly, please, at any time, don't hesitate to reach out and contact us. All we do is sports tourism. And I mean, we laugh about it. We're very, very narrow in scope, but we are very deep. And hopefully, I illustrated that to you all today. This is our passion. This is what we do. We've got a great team of almost 26 individuals committed to you and servicing you. If you're not a member of Sports ETA, our annual membership is $12.95. $1,295 a year, very affordable. That's organizational. That's for everybody involved. So if you want to come and sign up and become part of the association, just let us know. We'll gladly welcome you to the Sports ETA family.
Awesome. John, thank you so much. We're so grateful for you doing this today. And, this is part of a series. This is the first in the quarter. So we will see you all back here August 13th at 11 a.m. And one of John's colleagues will be presenting that particular course. And I think you're back at the end of the quarter.
Yeah,
Awesome.
absolutely.
Thank you all so much for joining us today. We appreciate it. And we will see you in August.
All
Bye,
right.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.